Right. All right. Let's see. And I did also register for this. I'm gonna, hello. Hello. Welcome everybody. Thank you for joining. We're just gonna give a few more moments for folks to join.
Hi, everybody. Thanks for joining. If you wouldn't mind putting in the chat where you're based, that would be great. Fareed and I are both based in Washington D.C. That's where the kind of main Pulitzer Center headquarters is, right near GWU. If you're familiar with Washington D.C., love to know where you're watching in from. Oh, more people joining. Thank you for joining. Please let us know in the chat where you're joining from.
Ooh, I see a hand is raised. Let me
Oh,
see.
okay.
I'm going to go ahead and change the settings here a bit, Erica, so that we can hear from you. Maybe there's a tech thing. So let me know.
Thank you,
Yes,
everyone.
I'll go ahead and Erica, let me know if you can speak now. The chat is disabled. Let me change
Oh my
that.
gosh, we are so sorry.
Is that what you were going to say, Erica? Awesome. I've just changed that setting. Can you try now, folks, and let us know if you're able to, um,
Oh,
where
there
you're
we go.
joining from? Yay, there
Thanks,
we go.
Erica.
Thank you, Erica. And thank you all. I see many of you joined also in the Q&A function and shared that feedback. Thank you for that. Awesome. Welcome from
Hi,
Wisconsin, from
hi,
Chicago.
Tatjana. Hi, Dorcas. Is it Dorcas Ikupe from Cameroon? Oh, okay. Welcome. Yeah, we'll be starting in just a minute. We're very grateful for everyone who's joined the AMA. We put out the open call for StoryReach Midwest about a little over a week ago. And we're excited about getting proposals from freelance and staff journalists to apply for this new fellowship. It's actually our second year of this fellowship. And Freed now will share more about how to apply and answer your questions coming up throughout this AMA. We appreciate it.
Well, why don't we go ahead and get started? I can just share the agenda real quick and then pass to you, Steve. So what we've
Yeah,
got cooking, everybody.
Freed, just real quick, go ahead and introduce yourself and
Oh, yes.
everybody.
I'm Fareed Mostofi. I work on the engagement team at the Pulitzer Center and was fortunate to work this past year with Steve on the inaugural year of the StoryReach Fellowship. And Steve, will you formally introduce yourself for folks who might not have met you before?
Sure thing. Thanks, Fareed. I'm Steve Sapienza. I am a senior editor of the Pulitzer Center, and what that means is I'm one of the editorial team members that reviews grants and applications from journalists all over the world. And been working with the Pulitzer Center for a number of years. And Fareed and I together managed this StoryReach Fellowship. Last year was the first year of the fellowship. And we've been collaborating here at the Pulitzer Center on supporting journalists and doing audience engagement and outreach. Really, for since the inception of the Pulitzer Center, that's been our focus. But StoryReach is a special new opportunity for journalists to work with us to do really amazing journalism and audience engagement. And we'll get into that in a moment. Free, you want to go over the agenda?
Sure. So we have a little bit of a presentation to start with, but mostly want to leave this session open for your questions and feedback. We're going to start with just reviewing the goals and the structure of the StoryReach Midwest Fellowship, which is this year's fellowship, and applications for that just opened. We're also going to be looking at examples from the inaugural year of the StoryReach US program, and see how that might inspire some ideas for applications to the StoryReach Midwest Fellowship. We'll be sure to review the application process for this fellowship to also clarify the steps that need to be taken by applicants. But mostly we want to leave plenty of time for questions and discussion about any of these topics or anything else that you're thinking of. And throughout our conversation, I see we're already doing this. You can use the Q&A function to share questions in advance that Steve and I can answer either in writing or out loud. But also if you share anything in the chat, we'll be sure to, and we've got two of us here to be able to monitor the chat and make sure everything gets answered there as well.
Yeah, so StoryReach US, what is it? Well, it's really a brand new fellowship at the Pulitzer Center. We started it last year. It was our first cohort, and what makes this fellowship very distinctive from other fellowships that are available is that we at the Pulitzer Center, with our resources and our funding, work very closely with the reporters, whether they're freelance or staff, who are partnered with a local news outlet to produce some groundbreaking and support groundbreaking journalism and audience engagement. So from the very beginning of the fellowship, we work very closely with our fellows on the identifying the audiences who might most need to hear about and know about the reporting. We have various kind of workshopping and other tools and opportunities for our fellows to learn and try different ways to reach new audiences within their projects. And I think it's really different because I'm like you. I come out of the background of reporting, and I think a lot of us work really hard on our stories just to get them published and hope that they have some impact. And I think what's unique about this is that we work from the very beginning with you to ensure that there is a plan in place for audience engagement around the project once it's published. And we'll work with the newsroom as well to do that. So that is, more important than ever in this new era we're in journalism, where audiences are fragmented and everywhere. We're really trying to figure out ways with you how to best reach the audiences that need to know about your reporting. And we've had some really wonderful examples of projects that have done just that Fareed and I'll share in just a moment with you. But that's the broad overview. This year, so last year we had 9 fellows from local newsrooms across the U.S. And this year we're doing a special focus on the Midwest. Yes, there's our inaugural year. And this year we're doing a special focus on the Midwest in the U.S. And we have a couple reasons for doing that. One is that there are studies that show that the Midwest has real issues with a decline in newsrooms. There are many news deserts, and just a lot of these local newsrooms are struggling to hold and keep audiences and to make connections within their community that could sustain their operations. So that's one reason. The second reason is that the Pulitzer Center for many years has been supporting freelance journalists and newsrooms, and also working with campuses and schools and doing a lot of events in the Midwest. In fact, we have a number of staff based in the Midwest. So this year, we're really trying to bring all of our resources together and focus in one area of the Midwest in the U.S. And yeah, it's a belief we have that we can have greater impact, that we can do more with you and with our fellows that we select this year to reach audiences and more broadly kind of have impact with the journalism that we support. So yeah, Bree, maybe you want to talk a little bit about an overview, just real quick, of who we supported this year, and then we'll go into some examples.
Yes. So in our inaugural year of the program, and this will look familiar for those of you who looked at this year's application, we asked applicants to apply with an idea for a reporting project that was relevant to the host outlet's audience that they were trying to reach. So their applications included what the project was, some pre-reporting on why they wanted to do that project, what they know and about why that project is needed. But also, and you'll see this in this year's application as well, they were asked to explain from your pre-reporting, what do you understand about the key audiences who need to access the information that you're researching as part of this reporting project for your host news outlet? And then what would be the engagement strategies that you would apply? And that could look like how you present the story, partnerships for getting the story shared in multiple venues, but also post-publication outreach to get the audience, those key audiences who've been identified in your reporting, to see the information, to hopefully equip them with what they need to be able to apply that information in their communities and maybe engage with the issue that was being reported. So we received a lot of amazing applications last year, and we were able to work with 9 fellows, and you can see them on the screen here. You can see the outlets that were hosting them for their projects. And what we found last year is, what was exciting is we saw applications for those last year, just like this year. We had some focus topics that we suggested. We saw applications on all those topics. So the group is actually reporting on several different things relating to health, climate and the environment, human rights issues. What unites the group, well, another difference in the group is we had some folks who are freelance journalists who were hosted by local or regional outlets in the US, and you'll hear an example of one of those in a moment. We also had about half the group who are staff journalists, reporters. They might also be in editor positions at their outlets who were part of the fellowship. And you'll hear one example of from one of those fellows in a moment as well. But what united the group is that everybody was working on a plan to apply what they've learned in their reporting to inform how the story was published and outreach plans. So in our inaugural year, what we've seen so far from this group, every single one of these folks have completed their projects. 8 of the 9 have been published. The 9th is in review right now and should be out soon. Many of them have led events. Many of them, as a result of the programs, not only the application and admission process, but also our monthly meetings have adjusted their plans based on what they learned in their reporting and what they learned from other fellows. And there's so much to share about this group, but we decided to go ahead and give you a glimpse at some trends in what we saw among the group by highlighting 2 of these fellows and their projects. So why don't we go into that now, and you can get kind of a deep dive. And what we're sharing with you are 2 examples, but they do represent some things we actually saw multiple fellows try. So why don't we start with hearing about heading up north to Maine and hearing about Marina Schaffler. Can I ask you, Steve, to talk about this project?
Yeah, sure thing. And one thing I just real quick I want to mention about more broadly about the fellowship is, what we found with our fellows this year is a lot of them worked in with multiple platforms. So maybe they were working with a radio station, but they also were working on short videos or documentaries. We've had we had journalists who came into the project who were expecting just to write a feature story, but ended up doing some scrollytelling, um, project, multimedia, and so that's part of what we do. We like in our proposals to see that you're thinking about perhaps collaborating with other platforms or working other platforms into your project. We've always kind of had um, that sense for wanting our grantees at the Pulitzer Center to really think about the many different ways to reach audiences with their work, their underreported stories. So we are looking for investigative stories, enterprise reporting stories, accountability stories, and so the first one that we'd like to showcase real quick is from the Maine Morning Star. And Marina Schaffler is a freelance journalist and author. She's been covering the issue of forever chemicals for a long time. And she wanted to use the fellowship to really do a deep dive into how these forever chemicals might be impacting and are impacting local firefighters. In terms of like the equipment that they wear that's treated with forever chemicals, exposure to foam chemicals during firefighting and exercises and training. So she came in to the project with this idea, and she really gave a lot of thought early on to how to reach these volunteer firemen. And Maine is actually a pretty large state. It's pretty rural, and she really thought through the challenges, not just the kind of distances, but also that maybe volunteer firefighters don't have a lot of time to spend reading a long form investigative, multi-part investigative series. Many of them might not be familiar even with the Maine Morning Star. So how do you reach these firefighters? And she really did a great job. We workshopped with her ideas, and she she went out into the firefighter community and listened to them about how they received information. And she decided that not only would she do the series of stories, but she would look to reach them using a landing page for her reporting that featured a short trailer, video trailer where you can kind of scroll through very quickly and get the main points from the reporting. And that's something that we at the Pulitzer Center and our data and research team came in and helped her and the outlet put that landing page trailer together. She also produced short videos because those can get shared very easily across the web. They don't necessarily need to be reading the articles to get the information. So that's another way. She also produced posters, these large posters with QR codes that helped show the firefighters how to protect themselves against forever chemicals. Things like turning out their equipment when they were done using it, the amount of time they should be wearing their equipment if there's been exposure. There were a lot of like steps and helpful kind of news you can use for firefighters. And then she worked with firefighter chief associations to get those placed into the firehouses, which is really fantastic and a really good example of like going exactly where the audience is for that story. And then or for that info. And then she also figured out the different newsletters that firefighters and fire chiefs often subscribe to, and was able to work with them to get the story shared through those newsletters. And then she pitched the story to the main NPR public radio station, and they actually interviewed her for an entire hour on this topic. They found it so so new, the information, and so important that they interviewed her for an entire hour. So she had, and then lastly, she took her information, her stories, and made them available and shared them with legislators, to the ones who are, making decisions about firefighting and protection of firefighters. And it's actually there's been a number of issues and recent years, accidents related to foam and these chemicals that were already on the radar of legislators. And her reporting is another strong bit of evidence and information that they've been able to use. And legislators are seriously working right now on bills to address the issue. So that's several examples from Marina Schaffler's project that should give you some ideas of different things that we've worked on with them for audience engagement as part of the reporting. Over to you, Free.
Our second example comes from a fellow, Jasmine Aguilera, who also partnered with Cassandra Garibe, who also ended up joining our fellowship meetings and was working with the cohort as well. And they were both working as staff reporters at El Timpano, an outlet based in Oakland, whose primary audience is community members in Oakland who are speaking English, Spanish, and also indigenous languages from throughout Central America. Their project, A Poisoned Community, was looking at lead abatement strategies to navigate the amount of lead in homes throughout the Oakland area and many buildings throughout Oakland, especially present in areas where there are community members who may be undocumented or renting and not getting access to address the lead in their homes. Also, it was an investigative piece examining what funding had been brought to Oakland's government to navigate lead abatement and what had happened with that money, if that money had been given to the local government. So what ended up happening first was there were a series of stories, and within the stories, you can see these are links here. My little hand is showing up on the screen, and we'll share these slides with you. Include a variety of strategies to engage their audience: short videos, short audio pieces, text, and photo. There were multiple stories published where at first the team was demonstrating the results of their investigation. So they did identify that the city government had received millions of dollars to address lead abatement in Oakland, and also got some information that is shared in the story about what has happened with that money, who is responsible for the spending of that money, and why it has not been spent, even though it is in hand. While they were reporting that story, this team also built audience engagement into the reporting process. So one thing that you can see, and go ahead and to the next slide to show you some of this, is that they began engaging community members in exploring their understanding of the role of lead in their communities in affecting health. And also part of how they got them asking those questions about what is the impact of lead on my home, on my family? How would I know if there's lead in my community? They actually invited community members to bring samples from their homes to test for lead. So they led community outreach events in different trusted areas within their community. They partnered with a university department to help with the testing of the lead samples. And then they also, while they were doing these workshops and encouraging people to potentially come and test for lead in their own homes, they were also getting an understanding from community members about what questions they had about the effects of lead, how they would identify lead poisoning in themselves and in their children. They also were getting an understanding of their questions about what it would look like to test and address lead in their homes, and also what they think their local government should be doing about lead abatement. So all of that not only was part of their stories, so you can see in the stories, some of the featured speakers or profiles in the story are people that they met during their workshops. It also, some of the anecdotes that became part of the reporting were anecdotes that came up during these in-person workshops. And what's exciting about that is that through both the audience engagement piece and the investigative work, we saw some very quick responses from local government. You can see one on the right here to the story once it was published. But also what this team went on to do is they also published their reporting in multiple languages. The screenshot here on Facebook is a sort of call for community members to potentially come and join some of these lead testing workshops, but it also offered a summary of the story that could be understood in multiple languages. The story was also shared through a text messaging platform. Also, the team worked with other local outlets. One example was KQED, a radio station that also reaches audiences in the Bay Area to talk about their story, to kind of extend the reach. The team also continued to engage with community members, and they published a Q&A story kind of outlining the common questions they got while they were doing the outreach workshops to explain what tenants' rights were when it came to lead. And then also part of their project was hosting a panel where they connected community members directly with local officials who are working on this issue to be able to answer their questions. So part of why we also share this example is some other trends we saw from many of our fellows was engaging community members as part of the reporting. Looking at what is not only the story presentation that will make it easy to share for audiences, whether that be a video on Facebook, something that's easily shareable through a text platform, putting stories in a language that's accessible to community members, but also how can I partner with other local outlets or newsletters like Marina did to get the information to audiences. And finally, several fellows this year worked on in-person events as a way to get the information out to audiences. So we hope that offers some examples that you can think about in your applications, but let's dive in before we get to your questions to what is the process of applying for this project this year, focusing on the Midwest. I'll pass it back to you, Steve.
Yeah, so we're really interested in hearing from you with some good proposals that are focused on investigative accountability reporting, could also be enterprise reporting projects. And the key thing here, whether you're a staffer or a freelancer, is that you are partnered up with one or even could be more Midwest U.S. newsrooms. So how does that work? You have a good conversation with an editor to pitch them your story if you're freelance or if you work there. And it should be a project, about an underreported systemic issue that you want to cover. We're open to all different types of topics. We do have a few topics that we've listed on our website that are topics that we have kind of placing a little special emphasis on, and that is health, reporting on kind of scientific progress or cutting edge research or policies that are important to global health and health programs. We're also interested in, fisheries, marine fisheries, the health of our waterways and water systems. When you think of the Midwest, of course, you think of the rivers of the Midwest, the Mississippi. You think of the Great Lakes. So anything related to the fisheries management or stewardship of fisheries and supply chains related to fisheries in those areas, human rights. Climate and jobs, how kind of Midwest work sectors are affected by climate change, exploring worker and employer experiences, job risks, and community responses to climate change, rising temperatures, extreme weather events, those types of issues. And, oftentimes issues and topics interrelate. So, just bring us a really ambitious project that you and a editor are very excited about. I think that's the most basic information and advice I can give you. Now around that, you do need to talk, and we asked for this in the application. You do need to talk with the outlet, and you have to think through it yourself of your ideas for audience reach and engagement. And different outlets will have different size staff and different size capabilities. And what we are trying to do here at the Pulitzer Center is really be there when we have our fellows with good project ideas to help, provide that support, to be the connectors, to give you advice on reaching audiences when that advice or that skill set or knowledge may not be there within that newsroom. So, one of the really great things that happened this year is the peer-to-peer support, and that's how a lot of our fellowships at the Pulitzer Center work. But when we bring the fellows together in our meetings and on the online platform, there's a lot of back and forth kind of support and advice that's being shared about audience engagement and also reporting too, which is a really great thing to see in our fellowship. So it's a 12-month part-time fellowship is the way we look at it. You can request up to $30,000 to pursue your reporting project. That like a third, up to a third of that can really go to as a sort of a stipend or to offset the cost of a staff journalist focusing more time on part-time on a project for an entire year. We expect everyone to kind of meet with us, a mandatory kind of group meeting once a month, and then Freed and I have opportunities to meet with us throughout the month as well, to help everyone along with their projects. And the application itself, things, there's sort of key. The statement of purpose is key, kind of how is this going to benefit you on your career path. We want a detailed description of the project and your distribution plan. You should think that through and discuss it really well with the partner news outlet. And we also want you to just take your best shot, dream about the audience, what you want to try to achieve with your audience engagement. Think outside the box. Fareed, you could probably give some examples here as well, and even maybe share some examples from our past reporting grants where it's been kind of atypical kind of audience engagement activities that have really helped projects.
Sure thing. And what I'm sharing on the screen right now, everybody, and this is also in the chat, is the StoryReach call for applications for the StoryReach Midwest Fellowship that we're talking about today. And everything we're describing is here, but one thing you'll see in the suggestions around how you might craft your audience engagement plan, all of this is informed by things we've seen grantees at the Pulitzer Center do to extend the reach of their reporting. Some of the things you might just consider are, as you're thinking about your reporting project and who the audiences are that you'll be connecting with while you report, folks you hope will see the reporting so that they're informed about your findings. Some of these strategies might really come from that question about what do we know about where these audiences get their information, how they like to get their information, how they connect with others. And with that knowledge, those audience engagement strategies will become clear. And it will become clear what's possible with you and your host outlet, and also where you might want to think about in your budget or in your plan, what questions you have about how to do the things you want to do, or what partners you might want to engage to do the things you want to do. So for example, is your audience primarily getting information on the web, through social media, through video, through photos, through text? We've also found grantees tell us that they found some of their target audiences are mostly getting information by listening to it while they do other things. How do you plan for that? Some of them are getting information by family members sharing over WhatsApp or Signal or in person. They mostly get it from the people who are talking about things in the news. Does that signal an in-person event? Might be something you want to consider. So take a look. We have some suggested strategies also in the application. You can see some ideas there. But one thing we'll be looking for in the application is how do those strategies reflect what you know, at least from your preliminary pre-reporting, about how your audiences are getting their information.
Yeah, thank you, Freedom. We'll get to the questions here in a moment, so get ready. In terms of the budget, as I said, it's up to 30,000. A lot of times we get questions about what can I include. Um, you know, Obviously, kind of any kind of hard costs that are related to the reporting itself are acceptable. In the in projects here in the U.S., that could be anything from travel, could be FOIA requests. It could include, and we ask about this if you plan on, you know, collaborating with a videographer or a photographer or an illustrator on your project, maybe a data journalist, you could write those costs as consultants um, into the budget. And then, as Freed mentioned, there's a lot of different types of activities. So we kind of, if you can think of concrete costs associated with doing audience engagement or outreach that let's say part of your project has a film and you're going to do a film screening, you could write the film screening costs into the budget, just as an example. But Yeah, what if you? Good question, Erica. What if you don't know the exact budget? Well, I think you have to kind of you know take take your best shot um, at what that budget would look like. You know, think about the scope of the project. What are all the components involved in the project? Are you involving, like I mentioned, photographers, videographers, researchers? Will it include, any extra research that might be costly, or as Freed mentioned earlier, even lab tests or air quality, for example, air quality tests. Those are the kinds of things you'd want to include as part of the budget. I think, if as you think through your reporting plan of what you plan, how you plan to report, who you plan to you look to as sources, how you plan to obtain the information to cover the story, that should help you. Outline the budget. We don't require super detailed um, budgets. Just sort of give us, if you're still like a little unsure. Well, you could just give us broader kind of line items, like I expect to spend $2,000 on travel, $3,000 for a photographer. Just try to think it out and maybe give yourself a little room. And if we like the project, and this is true with all of our grants, if we like the project, and there's some discussion that needs to be had about the budget, we're going to have that discussion with you, and we can work things out. Does it include travel within eight? Yes, yes, it would, and that's something that's true with all of our grants. Usually, travel is one of the bigger components with our grants. I think in the U.S., I've seen a lot of state and local municipalities, um, you know, have very high costs associated with Freedom of Information Act and other ways to access documents. Some documents, sometimes you're diving into archives that are paper and require um, the documents to be transferred into digital. There's a lot of different types of offenses that word, and I'll just stop there.
Well, we
I
would
think
love to.
on the bud. Go ahead, Bruce.
Oh, yes. And maybe this continues with one of our first questions, which we're seeing great questions about the budget. We would love to transition to the Q&A portion of our time here. I'm going to go ahead and place the slides in the chat. So if you want to reference these, they also have links to everything that we've been talking about. And if you go directly to the Pulitzer Center's website, say if you're at our homepage and you want to re-find the resources we've been going over today, you'll find this program underneath our journalism programs, where you'll also see a lot of great programming you could engage with and grant opportunities that could interest you and your outlets. For this particular opportunity, you'll head to StoryReach US, where you can hear some of that, see some language about the program overall, and you'll also see the call for applications, where as we went over, you can see which states are considered a part of the states we are looking for in your host outlets this year, and also the requirements for your application itself, the application deadline as well, which is Monday, March 31st. I see a great question from Erica in the chat. Can I apply if I've received Pulitzer Center grants in the past? Yes, absolutely. Yes.
Yeah, the only caveat there is you can't be on an active grant. So if we've got a grant that's open with you right now, we're probably going to want you to finish that project up and then take on the fellowship. Any other questions? Yes, you can. Good question. Thank you, Erica. Got a lot of good questions here. That's a great one. Yes, you can include equipment. So I would say you can't really purchase equipment, like photography equipment or video equipment. We prefer that you rent those types of that type of gear. If you're talking about buying hard drives, flash drives, kind of almost kind of tools of the trade, incidentals to do the reporting. Those kind of things are fine to include. But if the bigger ticket items, we prefer that you figure out a way to kind of rent those.
I'm seeing some questions coming through our Q&A as well. Here, Steve, I can read these out for us. So thank you to one of our attendees who has asked, is this opportunity open to early career staff writers at a local news outlet or are successful proposals typically from more experienced journalists? I can start, and then I'd love to hear your thoughts on this, Steve. We do have in our requirements that we are looking for ideally about at least 3 years of experience. That's in the suggested requirements on our site, but I'd love to hear from you, Steve, about anything else that we're
Yeah,
looking for in our applicants.
yeah, it's a great question, and if you look at our current cohort, we've got a pretty good kind of difference in backgrounds and in age, and it's really been helpful because everyone brings their experience to the table in our discussions, and I would say younger journalists have a lot to contribute. We're all trying to better understand where audiences are. I think younger journalists have keen awareness and insights that they can really help us. As we approach making these projects more effective in terms of reaching the many different audiences that are out there. So yeah, I'd encourage you to apply. I saw the question from Tatiana Walk Morris, and thank you for that. That's a good one. We do require this and ask for this in almost all of our grants, but I think with the fellowship, it's even more important. I really do. I think you've got, we're asking for a year-long commitment from you and the newsroom. We want you to have a real partner in that newsroom. That they're really excited about supporting you in that project, and also the potential for all of you to reach new audiences, to make better connections in the community, to build out and improve the civil discourse and civil engagement, what we call the civic knowledge space in these communities around these various topics. We've found in some of our projects where this happened in one of our regular grant projects where the journalist did such amazing local audience engagement on her own volition. She came up with these ideas and she did them, and the newsroom itself was saying that they wanted to adopt those techniques. So it's important to have a strong partner, and so we do want you to have that discussion, have have an editor that's really excited to work with you, and a newsroom that's really excited to partner with you as part of this.
I'll jump in, Steve, just for I know we're going to share this recording as well on the application page. The question was about if a letter of commitment from your host news outlet is required. We will be looking for that in the applications. And also, one thing we noticed in the application process last year was how much stronger in the applications it was when it was clear that all elements of the engagement plan had been discussed. The reporting, I mean, and engagement plan had been discussed with the outlet. We know that projects are in different stages of development and that might not be possible for everyone, but just encourage you in thinking about your applications as you talk to the outlet that will host your project, and maybe that's the outlet where you work, to think through both the reporting plan and also the engagement plan, because it might also reveal some great resources to support your plan and ideas. And then in the application, when we see that that's already been discussed with the host outlet, that's definitely something that's exciting to us. So
Yeah,
speaking of
great
partnerships,
response, Fareed. Yeah, and Erica, I see your question about PBS and ICT, and I'll answer that. And I think you know we would like to see that both of them are are interested. I think if you're if you're if your if your main publisher is ICT, for example, we would want them to be kind of fully committed. If PBS, for example, is going to republish what ICT, excuse me, has worked with you on, we would like to see that they send a letter, saying that they're excited about republishing and helping promote. But it's really who is that main partner that for your reporting, the main part of the project, and the audience engagement part of that. I hope that helped answer that side of things. And one more thing that Fareed mentioned that made me think this is important to know. At what stage of development in a project should you apply? I think we prefer to have projects that are in the kind of early stage of development in terms of the reporting, and that the project is newer. It's not that we don't want to support projects that have already been on topics that have already been published. It's just that sometimes we see projects where the best part of the investigation, the most impactful part, has already happened. I think we want both components. We want the best part of the investigation, the most relevant and important, impactful stories, and we want to work on the audience engagement with you around that.
um,
And I
I
Yeah,
can start
go
with
ahead.
Aaron's. I
Mhm.
see your question, Aaron. Thank you for asking how, if at all, could you see a university journalism project fitting into this fellowship? I'll start and then Steve, please jump in. The application does require a host news outlet from a local or regional outlet in the US, in the Midwest, in those 12 states that are outlined. So as long as the project is hosted by a local or regional US outlet, it's something that we would consider, especially if it's connected to some of those focus issues that we suggest. Those are just suggestions. But what I wanted to say about this is engaging a university program as a part of the process. What I'm imagining, and Aaron, you can let me know if you want to come off mute and tell us more, is engaging a university in that region and a local outlet in that region is already a very strong foundation for a project, because it's sounding like it would engage different segments of a community, especially if those are different. Those will reach audiences who need that information. So I would highly recommend applying and considering a university project as a part of the plan, but it would need to be hosted by a local or regional outlet in that region.
Yeah, I put an example in the chat of one that we supported just over a year or so ago, and it was really a fascinating project that was faculty led with student journalists working on in-depth reporting in two different states, Florida and um, Missouri. Looking at it was a multi-state investigation into fertilizers, and that is one model. It could also be faculty at a university that is partnered with a local newsroom as well. If students are involved, we're probably going to want faculty or a let's just say a strong um, mentor at a newsroom, a connection at a newsroom to make that project work. And one more thing, as we kind of like think about the application, one of the questions we have is who will be the lead journalist? It's okay to collaborate and have a number of people involved in the project related to the fellowship, but we're really wanting you on the application to let us know who's going to be the lead um, journalist.
What other questions do you have? And folks who've joined us on the webinar today, if you have a question about your specific project, feel free to let us know in the chat. We might be able to bring you in to ask that question.
This fellowship will likely start this summer in July. It's a year long. In case you're wondering about that, Freed, what else can we tell them about kind of? Oh, so we have monthly meetings. We bring everyone together once a month. We do updates on projects. Freed and I bring in speakers who on various things, everything from we've had speakers talking about legal aid for reporters. We've got through our resources at the Pulitzer Center a number of webinars um, related to everything from multimedia storytelling to FOIA requests, data journalism. We can plug you in at the Pulitzer Center when you're a fellow to a lot of different information to help you with your project. And we bring in speakers from outside the organization as well to complement and also to help our fellows with maybe some of the questions or challenges they might have with their fellowship projects. So we really view it as an accelerator. We're there to help you kind of better the projects and the reach of the projects. And yeah, we've got a lot of resources at our disposal to do that in a lot of different ways.
Just checking for any additional questions. Want to highlight again the slides that are shared in the chat, and we'll be sure these are also shared when we post this webinar. They do have links that go directly to the application page that describe the requirements, but also the process, as Steve mentioned. But I put this slide back up if you're just wanting to take a step back and remind us what what are these requirements again? As we mentioned, it's a 12-month kind of part-time. We're considering part-time, so it's providing ideally some dedicated time for someone or a team to work on a project, but definitely all of our fellows this year, it was one of many things that they were working on. Just provided some extra resources and time to work on those. that it provides up to $30,000 for reporting an innovative engagement plan. And we're looking at the general overview of that plan in your applications. And that in the course of that year, you're working not only on your own and with your team, but with all of us at the Pulitzer Center and your cohort of fellows to implement your plan. And we're having these monthly meetings to check in on that. And one thing that you'll see in the next few months is we are asking that fellows are also sharing learning from the program. So we'll be sharing some of that learning as the first year of fellows finish in the next few months. And that's also something we'll ask of our next cohort, that they're also thinking about their colleagues in about what other journalists and news outlets might want to know that they learned in this program.
Yeah, thanks for that, Fareed. And if it turns out you don't have a project that you feel is going to fit the fellowship this year, or you apply and maybe you don't get it, we do have our regular local reporting grants. So there's lots of different ways we can support good local reporting with freelancers and staff journalists. One more thing, I'll just add an area that we're keenly kind of interested in would be projects between local digital newsrooms and also maybe local TV news, some sort of collaboration as part of the project. I just throw that out there as something that maybe we're always eager to see and encourage more collaboration, and that's an audience, TV audiences, local TV news, that would be really interesting to see in some proposals as well. Looks like we have one more question?
Yes, Tatiana asks, will there be an interview required for finalists, applicants? And if so, when might that take place? And yes, we will be holding like short interviews with finalists for the program, and often that is a great time for us to clarify any questions about the project itself, but also the budget. So there were some great questions today about, well, what if as I'm still investigating this project, I don't have all of the details on my budget. So as long as there's some general, we can see that there's some general thinking about how your budget aligns with the plan that you've proposed. That's what we're looking for. And we might use the interview to just ask some questions, or maybe if we notice some areas where the budget could be reconsidered or questions, we could just get those clarified in that interview, and those would likely be happening, you think, Steve? It'd probably be either late April or into May. Great questions today. Thank you, everyone. Any other questions before we close? Thank you. And I will just share for folks who are watching the recording that if you have any additional questions, you can email reacheditorial@pulitzercenter.org. And also just sharing on the screen one more time, the call for applications. It has also an FAQ section and a lot of great information there as well. Steve, anything else before we close?
No, I just want to thank everybody for their attention, and yeah, appreciate your time.
All right. Well, thank you so much. We hope you'll apply, and we hope you'll also share with your colleagues who may be interested in working with local or regional outlets in the 12 states that are part of the StoryReach Midwest focus this year, to embark on this journey with us to see what can happen when we bring all of our resources together to get information to the people who need it. All right.
We hope you apply. Thank you very much.
Take care. Bye-bye, everyone.
Bye bye.